Hey folks, I've been lucky enough to film some gameplay of the new Mantic game Overdrive with Rob from Mantic Games. We sat together and we went through how the game plays and then actually went through a game itself as well, a bit of a battle report. The whole video was a little bit too long though, so what I've done is I've split it down to two, so you might notice this one has a bit of an abrupt ending. But that's why. Stay tuned to the channel and you'll see the gameplay very, very soon. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. So today I have a special guest.
Hello.
We've got Rob from Mantic Games here and we're going to be taking a look at Mantic's upcoming game now. The new game, which as you can see behind me, is Overdrive. So Rob, first of all, welcome to the studio.
Oh, thanks for having me. I mean, I've got to say, this is an absolutely amazing setup.
Thank you very much. Saying that for the second time. Not like I forgot to press record the first time. But yeah, thank you for coming, travelling up to the north and coming to show me Overdrive. So do you want to tell me about it?
Yeah, sure. So, like you say, Overdrive is our upcoming arena sports game.
Yep.
So, set in the Warpath universe, it's a sci-fi game, I guess, as you'll see from some of the characters in a minute. And it's sort of, I guess it's inspired by classic video game multiplayer modes, like Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, Pass the Bomb, all that sort of stuff. I think I've said before, you know, I used to really like Time Splitters 2 and all the different modes in that one. So I guess this was a chance to put sort of that kind of feel on the tabletop.
Yeah.
So you're playing lots of different modes of gameplay. So actually in the core box, you get 6 different modes to play, which gives a lot of longevity actually.
Yeah.
And I guess the standard mode is, it's like a kind of extreme wrestling. Actually, I described it as extreme musical chairs, actually, this one, but it's a bit more in-depth than that.
Yeah.
You start off by drafting your players, which we'll explain how that works in a minute, and then you sort of all plough into the arena, and then in the standard mode, it's a fight to sort of capture these different scoring areas.
Okay.
So I guess I can start by explaining how the scoring works in this mode. So, like I say, this is probably more of a King of the Hill mode, in which case we're trying to control these different areas. So these are called scoring zones.
Okay.
And from the start of the second rush, one of these scoring zones will be active. So you roll a dice. So if I roll that here, so 1. So in which case, number 1 here would be the active scoring zone. Okay. And then it's a mad dash to stand in there. So when you've got one of your players, the way you score is you have to have all of your base, and we call these tri-hex bases because they cover 3 hexes. You've got to have all of your tri-hex base in one of the scoring areas. So if I was here, for example, with Dozer, I would score 1 point at the end of that rush. But if you can manage to stand on these bonus ones, then actually you would get 1 extra point.
Okay.
And the reason for these ones being the bonus ones here is because actually it is a little bit easier maybe to push you out from those ones.
Yeah, because you're on the edges.
So it's slightly riskier.
Yeah.
Obviously, the more people you get into these scoring zones, the better. So, for example, if I had Dozer here on that one, and then Scarathron here, now I'd be very lucky if I managed to get 2 in, I'd actually get 2 points at the end of the rush. And the way the scoring works is, let's say I'm on a winning streak here, which I'm sure that will happen.
We'll see.
I would get 2 points at the end of the rush, and the score would go 1-2.
Okay.
Now, the way the scoring mechanic works is, it's not like, you know, a normal football game or anything like that. Is if you also manage to score in the next rush, then actually it's a tug of war. So let's say next rush you are very, very lucky, and you've got a bonus point as well. So you're scoring 3, it would go 1, 2, 3 back in your favour.
Okay.
And that's really good because it means that typically you can claw it back potentially because you've got 8 turns or rushes. So you do find the score tends to go back and forth quite a bit. If it does ever get to 8, I think by that point you're so outclassed, or the opponent is so outclassed that the crowd sort of goes, actually, do you know what? I've seen enough of this. I want to walk away and kind of stop watching. So if you do ever get to 8, then it's an immediate end, and that's the end of the game, and the other person goes off to cry for a bit. The other way of scoring as well is actually by knocking out your opponent.
Okay.
So if, for example, we were separate teams, Dozer comes in, slams Scarathron, knocks it out, that would be an immediate 1 point for you. Or
yes.
So you've got, in the kind of, you know, the standard mode, you've got 2 ways to kind of score points. Claiming the active score zones and killing knocking out your opponent.
And I keep saying killing as well, but they can't be killed in this game.
That's right, that's a good point actually. Yeah, there's nothing worse, I don't know, particularly when you play a league or something like that,
Yeah.
and your favourite character gets not killed.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like really depressing. Or if they're knocked out for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Because this one it's obviously 2 players. We both have 3 giants each.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if one of those giants got killed,
Yeah.
then it'd be almost game over straight away.
Yeah, you're right up against it, aren't you then?
Yeah, so, I mean, we'll talk about the board a little bit, but what happens is, say, for example, your character gets knocked out, they come off here, get knocked out, sit there, but then actually, they only get knocked out for 1 rush.
Yeah.
You imagine here, there's lots of medibots and all things like that, pumping them full of drugs, or in the case of the robots, the engineers there replacing their arms, and then they can kind of be placed here, ready to come on in the next rush. Which just means that, and again, that's sort of that video game thing, is you just respawn pretty much. So it does mean it's quite quick. It also can be sometimes be advantageous to be knocked off, because you can come back on, and let's say that's the active one, you can suddenly kind of burst in here.
If you're over here one turn, and to be honest, it might be quicker to get knocked out to get back to that side of the board.
Yeah, so that's a tactic. Sometimes you might think, well, actually, I'm going to kind of run in here and try and get slammed, so potentially I get. Then again, it might.
But then you give
best laid plans.
That's all the tactics, isn't it?
So going around the board, so I've talked about the knockout zones. We've said the score rushes here.
Yep.
So again, that'll be coming back and forth. You've got the different scoring zones.
Yes.
They're coloured differently, blue and yellow, because in the invade game, I'm actually trying to get into your scoring zones, and you're trying to get into mine. So actually having these as a different colour will help us to do different game modes in the future.
Yeah, and just if it's not shown up too well on camera as well, what we've got is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 around here as well to point which one kind of comes up for certain game modes as well.
So down here you've got your overdrive markers.
Yeah.
And the overdrive is obviously the clue's in the name, I guess, in some ways, but each of the characters has a kind of unique abilities they can do, all the time.
Yeah.
But they also have a signature sort of overdrive ability. And that you can only do that once per rush, and you can only activate 1 overdrive once per rush as well. Okay. So that's a really great balancing thing, because it means that typically the overdrives are very powerful. Cynic Docker, the space jellyfish, can mind control their opponent. Dozer can disappear into a shell and kind of get locked down into one of these areas.
Yeah.
So they're very powerful, but you can only do 1, and you might not be able to pull some of them off. Some of them might actually fail. So using those is sort of a key to the tactics of when do you want to do it.
Yeah.
We've got the knockout bench here, so you've got the kind of the knockout bench here, which is where they kind of get their meds.
Yeah.
Then they kind of go in here to show that they can come back on. This is the rushes here.
Yep.
So we've got 8 turns. And the way a turn works is we both have 4 action counters.
Yep. Here.
Yep. So I've got my blue, you've got the yellow. And what we do is we can play, to activate one of our characters, we play an action token on them. So I would play 1.
Yep.
Then it'd be you to activate.
Yes.
Then me to activate. So it's alternate activations. You can do 2 actions per character.
Okay.
So you can activate them up to 2 times. So again, that's another thing you've got to decide is, do you spread it out, kind of activate all 3? Or do you kind of really tool 2 of them up and get stuck in?
Yeah, that's it.
So they're the kind of basic rules, I think, there. So activating a character up to 2 times. We both have 3 players each. And I guess the next thing to explain really is how the drafting works.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So it's a little bit like we're in the school playground. We've lined up our friends at the wall, and then we want to choose how they choose which players we want on our team, because we're the coaches. You imagine we fly around the galaxy on our souped up kind of space limousines, arriving at this Overdrive arena, and often we're told, these are the giants you've got available, almost make do. And you're like, okay, fantastic. So what you'll do is, if you want to play just like a fairly casual game, standard game, you'll line up the available players you've got on the edge here. So we've got Dozer, Scarathron, Cynic Docker, Rank Reborn, The Spawn, and Caradon. And these are the ones that come in the standard core game.
Yes.
You line them up, and then we would take it in turns to choose who we want on our team. Now, if you add more players, you could line them up as well. Yep. So I think at launch we'll have 2 more, which is Tigrax and Shadow.
Yep.
So you could just pop them on the lineup, and they'd be available as well.
Okay.
If you want, in a casual game, you could have 2 Dozers. it might be that one of them's a clone or a robot or something like that.
Yeah.
So there are ways to use kind of customize this if you want. Once you've sort of played a few games, we sort of then say, well, you might want to actually use the advanced kind of drafting. And in that case, what happens then is I would actually line up my 6 in front of me.
Okay.
Like this. There we go. So I would line all these up. You would line up your 6 on your side. So even if you might have identical lineups, but then what we do is starting with the home coach, I would go, well, I've been practicing a lot with Brank. I definitely want to use Brank. I'm going to put Brank in.
Yeah.
And then it would be your turn, and you might say, oh, I really like smacking people in the face. I want Caradon. Yeah. So you choose your team like that.
Yeah.
Now, if we both had Brank in our lineups, as soon as I choose Brank, it means you can't choose
He's kind
him.
of like sort of banned from my side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing to remember is actually the first pick is interesting because it is important because it means you get your favourite. So if your favourite is, I really want to use Brank, but you as a second player can go, right, okay, well, I've got the perfect counter to Brank, and it might be Cynic Docker because I'm going to mind control Brank and start slamming your opponents. So actually, having that second pick is quite good because then you can see, right, I've got a really good counter to that. It's not quite rock, paper, scissors. It's not Pokemon. Fire isn't good against leaf or something like that, or grass. But you can sort of tailor your team to counter what the opponent's doing.
And I guess as well, with different game modes as well, certain sort of giants will be better at certain things. So your favourite might only be the favourite for a certain kind of game mode as well.
Yeah, so Brank, for example, is very good in the standard mode because he's good at slamming, which means he's good at moving people around.
Yeah.
But in something like Pass the Bomb, where it's all about being a bit more agile and dodging, getting the bomb, or running after people, his speed is awful. So actually, he becomes a bit of a liability. So it's interesting to see, because there are rules for league play.
Yeah.
Similar sort of thing. You have your 6 that you have throughout the league, and it might be that Brank is great in some, but absolutely awful in the others. So so again, you can sort of think, well, I might try and force them to take Brank into their team because I know I can take that out. So there's almost like a meta game in the drafting in some ways of what you want to do.
I really like the idea of the drafting, to be honest, because I think, and I mentioned this briefly on the live stream that I did as well, is that basically what it means is that whenever a new release comes out, it's available for everybody. It's not like, well, it's not for my faction or I really like that model, but it doesn't come in my team kind of thing. Everything that comes out is available to everyone, and it just kind of, it'll grow the game. More choice means kind of, it makes that drafting even more important when there's more choice.
Yeah, and I think that was always a big design decision. God, that's a tongue twister there. But that was always a big thing that we wanted to do. Is that I don't know if you know, Andy, but I quite like playing goblins. So
it's been mentioned twice.
So for me, if there's a dwarf release for something, I spit on the floor and curse the goblin gods. But with this one, it's like, well, actually, it doesn't matter what faction you play or something like that, because each of the giants can be added to your roster.
Yeah.
And in the league, there is rules for adding an extra giant to your initial lineup if you've got enough cash.
Yeah.
So we really wanted that because it helps to mix up the meta.
Yeah.
And I think, in the future, if Overdrive does well, we can start to look at characters that start to mess around with the mechanics a bit more, and it might be, you might get extra activations or that sort of stuff. So, I think the drafting gives us a lot of space to move around.
Excellent.
Now, I don't know if you want me to have a look at a card, maybe, so you can see what all the different abilities are on the card.
Yeah, let's talk about one so people can understand exactly what's actually on a card.
Yeah, so let's go for the spawn, I guess.
Right.
So we'll put the spawn. So you can see each character's got their move stat, so that's how far they can move. Strength is used for slamming and some passing the bomb, I think, as well. Agility is when it comes to dodging, which we'll explain how that works in a second. Speed is if you want to dash, and is also for stealing, I think, as well. And dashing is when you want to extend your move a little bit more.
Okay.
Skill, at the minute, that's for things like throwing the ball. It's actually, some of the tests might be for skills as well. And then your HP, health points. Yeah. Basically, if you're reduced to 0, you kind of come up here. Yeah. You've also got keywords here. So the spawn, for example, is alien and terrifying. In the standard mode, if you're just playing a casual game, you kind of ignore that at the minute. Yeah. Maybe in the future we'll see what happens to that. But In a league play, they're used a lot more because that will affect certain scoring mechanics as well, because you earn extra cash for doing certain things, basically. So there's all these different sponsors like Pepsi, Cola, and Pete Zor Express, which are based on kind of Warpath names.
Yeah.
And it might be that they might say, if you've got an alien, I think actually one of them is Galacti probes, which is if you slam someone in the rear, then you get extra points.
Yeah.
You get extra cash.
Yes.
So that's something to look out for when you play in the league. Here you've got the abilities. So these are the abilities that you can always do.
Yep.
So some of them might be actions, which in case drag here is an actual action, a bit like a slam. And some of them might be that they're always sort of on and they help you all the time. So long tentacles means that spawn doesn't have to be next to someone to target them.
Excellent.
And then on the back, like I said earlier on, these are their overdrives, and they're the powerful kind of one-off moves that you want to do.
Yeah.
So the reason for having these on the front is because this is the stuff you're doing all the time.
Yeah.
And on the back, you want to be thinking about,
Yeah.
the key sort of moves when you want to do those.
Excellent.
Okay, so do you want me to show you how movement works and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
So if I get my Brank is my typical favourite for examples here. So movement is actually quite straightforward. We've changed it a bit. If you have played Dreadball, how the giants work there, they can be a bit cumbersome here in Dreadball. Sorry, but here we've sort of made it hopefully a lot simpler.
Yeah.
So Brank, for example, has a move of 4, which means you can, at the simplest, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4. And although you're moving obviously into multiple, you're actually moving into 2 hexes. We say, well, that's a 1 hex move. You can turn on the spot for free. So you could turn like that. You could turn all the way around if you wanted. And that would be no movement at all.
And is that at any point in your move or just at the start? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can turn, so you can go, 1, I can turn around there like that. 2, if I wanted, turn again. 3, and 4 like that.
Yeah.
You can also pivot, sort of like more like pivot on one of your hexes. So that's more like 1, like that. Oh, sorry, I haven't done a very good job of that. But basically 1 to there. Yeah. That's better. There we go. I did it properly that time. But I think that the other thing to remember is you've kind of got these front hexes here.
Yeah.
And
you've got them sort of paintable. We'll get a nice close-up shot of them where they kind of show their front and rear.
Yeah, so that's really important because front and rear arc is very important for different moves. So the threat hex is here around the front. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you need to have your threat hexes. When you want to slam someone, for example, you need to target them with one of these threat hexes, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then if you imagine there's an imaginary line through this base, anything at the back around here is your rear arc. Yeah. So that affects certain things you can do. For example, slamming. If someone comes in to slam you here, if they're in your front arc as well, you can slam them back, or you can dodge. But if they're around the back, you can only dodge, and there's modifiers there. Okay. So yeah, movement is actually pretty straightforward. I suppose one thing is tactically moving around. You've got to be careful of exposing your rear. Yeah. Just like real life, I guess, really. So it does mean you've got to think about it, and having the tri-hexes means that movement is, I guess, a key part of it. I guess that's something we like to do in a lot of our games. Like you think of Armada or Kings of War. Flanks and kind of rear charges are all that kind of extra thing to think about. So positioning is quite important.
I think it's something you don't tend to see in too many games, to be honest. And I think it's a really simple way to bring in an extra level of tactical kind of sort of nous to the game. A lot of arena games tend to just be, I can see all around me. Everything's a threat, if you like. But I like the idea of basically in this game and in Dreadball where somebody's charging up behind you, they're coming like 100 miles an hour from behind you. You don't have time to react. And I think it works really well in something like this.
Yeah, and it also means that speed, again, is really, really important because someone like Caradon is a little bit quicker. So that means they're probably going to be able to get behind you, which suddenly puts them in a different class compared to one of the... Because, Brank is good at slamming. I think strength 3+, but he's slow. So he's typically going to be coming at you at the front. Yeah. Whereas Caradon, sneaky shark, swimming around, attacking you from the back.
Interesting.
So I guess we've talked a lot about slamming there, so it's probably important to show you how it works.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Actually, no. What I can do is just talk about the movement. Sorry. Yeah. I talked earlier on about your speed, so you can dash to extend your speed. So, for example, I've got Brank here, and he's desperate to move a little bit further. So he can move 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he might just, he needs to get to this hex here. Maybe more. Maybe he was like trying to get in the scoring zone.
Yeah.
You think, I just need one more. Now you can dash.
Yeah.
And I suppose this is a good time to talk about the tests as well.
Yeah.
In that case, you need to do a dash test. Now, typically, all tests start with 3 dice. And then depending upon what type of dash test they are, you'll then do certain things with the dice.
Yeah.
So if, for example, it's like, we talked about the spawn. The spawn has got drag strength test 1.
Okay.
So that means I would roll 3 dice, and I only need 1 success, and then it's done.
Okay.
You might have another test, which is like dash, is 1, 1, 2, 3. So on the first test, you only need 1. Yeah. If you wanted to dash again, you'd need 2. If you wanted to go completely crazy and dash again, you'd need 3.
Okay.
So in which case, for Brank, to do that 1, I'd roll all 5 dice. And in that case, sadly, I wouldn't be able to do it. So what you do is you'd stop there and you take a wound. You imagine they've sort of exhausted themselves. Yeah. They kind of go, I'm worn out. I mean, the robot, I guess a robot might malfunction. Maybe kind of, something, oil pipe starts spilling over all over the place. So you would stop there and take a wound.
So there is a bit of risk reward to it as well, because I remember from Dreadball, you just fail, don't you? Basically, if you dash. Where actually here, if I don't make it, there's a negative impact.
Yeah.
Here, like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it does become more of a risk. So you've really got to think, okay. Brank on a 5+, you're kind of clenching your teeth as you do it. And then the final one is if it says a test is an X test, that means that I roll and you roll. So it's an opposed roll. So that would be for like slams and things. Okay. So I thought it was worth mentioning dashing because I'm sure one of us might need that extra hex. When it comes to slamming, that is actually one of these hex tests. So let's say you've got Caradon here.
Yep.
And you want to come in and slam Brank. I don't know why you would. I mean, I feel quite sad for Brank. So you would come in and you first of all start by doing a run. So 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
And you need to make sure one of your threat hexes is basically, Brank is in one of your threat hexes here. I suppose that it's worth mentioning you don't have to be all the way up to him like that. You know, you could come in at the side here with what imagine they're kind of punching him out. A quick jab in the side. You could come in like that. So there is actually quite a lot of options for where you can get round.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because when you've won a slam, you'll be able to push them back. So actually deciding where to push them back could be key to where your positioning is. Because if you're stood here, then they're going to be pushing back like that, into one of these hexes.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting actually, because it means that, again, going back to that positioning, you want to be in the right place.
Yeah.
So let's say we've done the slam here. Okay. Now I would start as Caradon with 3 dice. I'd get 1 extra because I didn't start adjacent. So again, that's that when you want to be kind of moving in.
That's it, the momentum of kind of coming up with a bit more power.
Yeah, and then you've got the option here as Brank to either slam back because I'm in one of your threat hexes, or you can dodge.
Yeah.
So again, that would be an opposed test. So you'd start with 3.
Okay.
In which case, there's no modifiers for you for this one. So, and then you would choose whether to slam or dodge.
I think we'll dodge. We'll try.
Okay,
to dodge
so you can dodge. So let's look. So I think Brank is. I think he's a 5+. Unfortunately for you. Yeah. So Brank is a 5+ on his agility.
Okay.
So I'm a 4+ on mine.
Okay. So
we'll just do a basic one without the. Okay, there's Caradon. Yeah.
Okay.
So my strength is 4+. So I would roll mine. Oh, now this is actually worked quite well for me to explain something. So you would look at yours. You've got, sadly, no successes.
No.
Now, at the minute, it looks like I've only got 1 success.
Which is a 6 there, yeah.
6s explode. So just like Dreadball, if you've got a 6, it allows you to roll another dice.
Okay.
Oh, that's not very good for me. The only thing I have got is I've got something called Bloodlust, which means I can re-roll 1 die when making a slam. So I could roll that one. Oh,
you got another
here
6.
we go. Choo choo. The 6 train starts. Okay.
All right.
So you can see how actually the 6s and potential for re-rolls can make a real difference. So I've gone up there from 1 to now 3.
Brilliant.
So what would happen then is you would normally take 3 wounds.
Yes.
Although Brank's got an ability called Can't Feel a Thing, which means he reduces that by 1.
Okay.
So you would grab your 2 wounds, you could put them on the base or put them near the card.
With
and then I get to push you back. So I'm going to say, okay, well, I'll push you back to there. And then I've got the option of, do I follow up? And I guess following up is an interesting one, because if I stay here, it means I can do another slam and get the bonus.
Yeah.
But if I've got, if I follow up, it means I've got a threat hex on you, which will modify one of your rolls later.
And I guess potentially you're moving somebody out of a target zone, out of a scoring zone, and potentially moving into it yourself as well. So there's reasons why you'd want to follow up.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say, if let's say Brank was here, and I came in there, I'd slam you back, I'd push you back to there, and I'm like, and then I'd come in and go, yes, thank you very much. I'm now scoring. So like I say, that's again moving people around and getting that position is really important.
I think it's one thing, as I was lucky enough to read the rules, and I think it looked like kind of movement was going to be important. But I think actually, like now seeing it with the tri-hex bases, just the way you can kind of maneuver a model around, the way you can kind of get around different sides of it, the way you can knock something back, and by choosing which way to maneuver your model to come in and slam, to move them in a different direction, I think it's, you think of the 6-sided hex and that I've got 6 blades, but actually with those tri-hex bases, it opens it up a lot more than it would ordinarily, I think. Yeah,
and also the positioning means you can kind of block areas off. You can try and make it difficult for people to come through. So there are a lot of tactics for where you put your character.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting thing. Now, obviously, if I'd come in the back, again, if you want to do a rear slam, you need to make sure you don't cross that imaginary line.
Okay.
That comes through here. So if I'm there, although one of my hexes is in your rear, that wouldn't count. You have to be all the way in.
And I assume you have to start from the rear as well. Do you? You have to start?
No.
Interesting.
There's no. So that's one of the things that's changed from Dreadball is that was a foul. There's no fouls in this. I mean, this is all about punching each other in the face.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. So and that's why I was saying why Caradon being fast is actually pretty good, because you can try and get round. Now the problem you will still have is that if I enter one of your threat hexes and I want to move out, I then have to evade.
Yes.
So that is an agility test. If I fail my agility test, you then get a free slam, and I can only dodge. So then so again, it's another risk thing. Is I really want to get behind you, but I might end up fluffing. My luck, I would end up fluffing the roll, and then I'd not only would I stop, you then get a free slam.
Yeah.
But if I did get all the way around here, what then happens then is I still get my 4.
Yep.
You would start off with 3. But because I'm in the rear, you lose 1. And then you can only dodge as well. Because you can't imagine you punching me in the back.
No.
And I guess it's worth mentioning with the modifiers, it never affects the number on the dice.
Yep.
So for example, my strength doesn't go up to 3 or 2 or whatever. It just affects the number of dice.
Yeah, I think that's a great mechanic. It means that once you've played a few games, you start to remember what your stats are. The stats never change. The stats are the stats, and you're just adding and taking away dice as and when you modify things.
Yeah, and the whole point was we really wanted this to be a really quick game. You could crack out at the end of a night. Maybe you've played a bit of a bigger game or something like that. And you're I'm a bit worn out here, because typically a game lasts about an hour once you've got the rules down. But also, it has got that depth there for the leagues, for tournaments potentially as well. I mean, we're looking forward to hopefully having some tournaments at Mantic. Because, when you start to look at it and go, okay, well, this combo, it's interesting because Martin, who I work with, you see sometimes on the videos with me, we have a ongoing rivalry, let's say. And he approaches it very differently, looking at, well, I like this combination of characters because I can see how they would work together. Yeah. Whereas actually I'm a bit like, I just like this character to do this and that character to do that. So it's interesting to see how you approach your team as well.
Yeah.
So I guess we've done slamming, we've done movement. I guess the only other thing to mention finally is ranged attacks.
Yep.
So not many characters have a ranged attack. And that was mainly because the arena's quite small.
Yeah.
So we didn't want it to be that, I could just stand here and shoot you all off the board. So, for example, in these 6, only Scarathron's got a proper ranged attack, and it'll say on the card. And the way ranged attacks works is you can target someone up to 7 hexes away. Okay. Now let's see if I've positioned him properly here. So you choose one of these one of your 2 front hexes as the starting point, and then you have to look for the shortest route possible, basically.
Okay.
So you count the hexes. It doesn't have to be in a straight line.
Yep.
You can going to go one, sort of like that.
Yep.
In this case, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you're actually counting to their base. So you start in front of here and you go to their base.
Yep.
That was just in range. Now, if unfortunately that the dozer's got in the way, so it's now 1, 2, 3 is blocked.
Yep.
In which case, I have to sound to go bend around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can still just make it for that one. So you imagine it's not always a straight line. You can sort of curve around slightly like that. You can never enter your rear arc. So I couldn't shoot someone and then go 1, 2, 3 like that. And obviously, if you start to look at that when someone else there, then it becomes difficult.
Yeah.
So you can shoot into combat. They don't really care about hitting each other. That's fine. And the other thing to remember for that one is if it's 7 hexes away, you can aim for 7 hexes.
Yeah.
If you're aiming for someone between 1 and 3, there's no penalty.
Okay.
If it's 5, 6, if it's more than 5, then you get a -1.
Okay.
So it does make range attacks quite hard because you've got to get into position.
Yeah.
And you have kind of got to get close up, which means they might get hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the basics. I think there.
Fabulous. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month. And there is lots of different tiers and bonuses, which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.